This is a VR to Pipes, Beards and Guns for his 300 sub first year anniversary giveaway. First of all, I want to say how much I enjoy your channel and your videos, and to wish you all your best for your future subs. I'm sure you're going to soon be up there waiting for your 1000th sub before you know it. You ask us to talk about one of our other hobbies, and I could only think of 3 hobbies I've got. One is writing and reading. I write short stories, poems, and the such like. The other one is I used to be a Freemason, and I've researched all the generals in the Civil War on both sides who were Freemasons, and have got their lodges and their Masonic career and 1 or 2 other details. But I suppose the hobby that I've got that's maybe unusual, excuse me while I light my pipe. I'm fascinated by medical history, so I do a lot of collecting of facts about medicine, about the history of medicine, about the discoveries of medicine, the people involved, and that kind of thing. Especially some of the early days of medicine. It used to be thought that Hippocrates was one of the first practitioners of what we could call modern medicine. But now we're beginning to realise it goes far, far back, further than that, to an Egyptian. He wasn't a pharaoh, although in the mummy films he's portrayed as a pharaoh, and that was Imhotep. He was probably the wisest man of his time. He was a great architect, and he started building the pyramids and that kind of thing. He was a scientist, a politician. He was steward to the pharaoh, but he was also a great healer, and he was a priest who did embalming, and it's believed that because he did embalming he learnt a lot about the body and how to heal. And they believe, and there's evidence, that he has written a lot of medical treatises, but unfortunately many of them will be in his tomb, and they haven't found his tomb yet. But we know that he was revered the world over for many, many centuries after his death as a very wise person, and people would make pilgrimages to his tomb and they would seek healing there, even though he was dead. And during his lifetime he was able to do some remarkable healings, using, for example, honey on wounds, because it was an antibiotic, and various other things. So he's quite an interesting character. But any facts about medicine, about the history of medicine, I really enjoy. So I watch lots of programs on the history of medicine. I read lots of books on it. You know, I can tell you that one of the most famous battlefield surgeons was a man called Baron Larry, Dominic Larry. He was Napoleon's staff surgeon. He's credited with developing the ambulance to get people off the battlefield quickly. But he wasn't averse to doing operations on the battlefield. He would do amputations and that kind of thing, things that needed to be done fairly quickly. And he had a remarkable success rate, partly because he was such a fast surgeon. He could amputate a leg, and the leg would be off within 30 seconds, and the operation complete within a minute or so, which in the days before anaesthetic is good going. What you wanted was a skilled man who could operate quickly when you were under the knife without anaesthetic. And when he operated in the battlefield, he would call over a soldier and ask him to kneel on the floor, and he then became the operating table. And then he'd throw the person to be operated on onto the soldier, and his assistants would hold the man down while Larry went to work. And such was his fame. He was made a baron, and was held in high esteem by Napoleon. So he's quite a character. I'm sorry, I'm having real trouble with this pipe. I've got in it some Westmoreland flake and it's a bit damp. It's refusing to stay alight. I'll just give it a little prod. But amongst my favourite people are people like Paul Ehrlich. He was looking for a cure for syphilis. And being a German, he tried out various dyes that were being manufactured. It was the time when new dyes were being made chemically. And he did a lot of experiments with a dye called Salvarsan. And then he eventually found one, Salvarsan 606. And that seemed to cure syphilis. And he used it very successfully. Unfortunately, after his death, it was found that what it actually did was drive the syphilis into the brain, and the person usually died of madness caused by syphilis. So that was a bit sad, but he certainly did a lot of research on drugs and on finding different sulfonamides. Another one who I admire was a man called Schmalweis. He was a surgeon and doctor who looked after one of the maternity wards. Now, the maternity wards at that time, people didn't like going to them because so many of them died after childbirth of infection. And it's not surprising because many of the surgeons would be working on a dead person, doing a demonstration of anatomy, and then go straight onto the wards and examine the women who are pregnant. But Schmalweis noticed that although the rate of deaths in the hospital he worked in was something like 40–50%, there was a nunnery not far away where a lot of the women went, and they'd got the death rate down to about 5%. So he asked if he could visit, and he did. And the thing he noticed was that all the nuns, before they went to the patient, would wash their hands with carbolic soap and then wash their hands after they'd seen the patient. And he realised that that was what saved lives. So when he went back, he insisted all his staff should wash their hands. And everybody laughed at him and sort of, oh, silly fool. Why should we wash our hands? But his staff did it. And whilst the other surgeons still had the same death rate, he got his death rate down to 4%. And from that came the realization that cleanliness was very important. Anyway, I'm going to stop there because I could go on for a long time. But I'll finish with a joke. There was a bowel surgeon. He'd been practicing as a surgeon for 20 years and it was a very comfortable life, but he wanted to fulfill his real dream, which was to become a motor mechanic. So he entered a mechanic school to train as a motor mechanic and received his first test back with a score of 200%. So he sort of asked his teacher, how could I score so high? How did I get 200%? And his teacher said, well, the first part of the test was taking the engine apart, and you got 50% for that. The second part was putting the engine back together again, and you got 50% for that. So he said, well, what did I get the 100% for? He said, for doing it through the tailpipe. Anyway, I wish you all the best for your giveaway. I'll put a link down in the bucket so that people can give you a visit. And I hope that the video's okay.